think Ryan and I, who's going to be speaking from the Metropolitan Planning Council, he's going to talk about Union Station, and he and I together will be able to answer your questions. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. While we're pulling up the slides here, I just want to thank Rick and the Midwest High-Speed Rail Association for having me. I'm very excited to be here speaking to you, and also want to say that it's an honor to share the stage with President Preckwinkle. I think we can all agree that we are very lucky to have her. So a little bit about Metropolitan Planning Council. We are an independent, non-government, nonprofit here in the Chicago region. We've been here for more than 80 years, and we are dedicated to making the region a more sustainable, equitable, and prosperous place. And so for us, this means planning housing issues, transportation, and also now natural resources, including water. And myself, my personal interest in this, I'm originally from Kalamazoo, Michigan. I moved here in 2004 to go to school, and I've been a regular Amtrak rider ever since. Kalamazoo is a great destination, great Amtrak destination. I encourage everyone to check it out. So what is Metropolitan Planning Council's interest in Union Station? You guys know it's a key part of our region, of our transportation network, and of our economic engine here in the region, right? There's actually more passengers go through Union Station every day than Midway Airport, because it's how we get people to jobs here in the Loop and around the region. Of course, it's also an important intercity travel node, and because of that and because of its capacity constraints and the need to upgrade it, it is a priority in our Go-To 2040 regional plan. At Metropolitan Planning Council, planning is our middle name, so when something is a priority in a plan, we're on top of it. It is, of course, in a prime West Loop location, right? It's a growing neighborhood, both the office market, residential, the restaurants there. And so Union Station has the potential to both grow with the neighborhood and to also help anchor growth in the neighborhood, as we've touched on, to be a real asset for the neighborhood. And finally, it has lots of underutilized space, as Derek was just telling you about, lots of potential to grow. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today, how we can capitalize on that growth. MPC has a long history of being involved with Union Station, but we'll start in 2010 when we were proud to be the only non-government partner on the panel that helped create the Union Station Master Plan that Derek talked about. And we led a civic advisory committee to make sure that the voice of business and voice of community was included in that plan and reflected in the plan. And then in 2012, the master plan was released. Great, we have a document, we have a guiding light to follow. But of course, to make all those things happen requires funding, and that's the sticky part, and that's what I'll be talking about today. And so as we start we thought about how we could promote the potential of Union Station to start to attract some interest. And in 2013, we held a placemaking contest called Activate Union Station. Some of you might remember this. Placemaking is the concept that you can use light, quick, cheap, sometimes temporary methods to activate an underutilized space, whether it's a vacant lot in your neighborhood or whether it's the Great Hall in Union Station. And one of our inspirations for this was actually Philadelphia Union Station, which is very similar to ours, right? It's across the river from downtown, also on the edge of a rapidly growing neighborhood. And they had this big parking lot out in front of their station that was just sitting there and wasn't being used that much. And what they did is they turned it into this thing they called the porch, which is a place you could go hang out, have some fun. There was a mini golf course at first. There are food trucks. You could go there for like a yoga class. And it's a great success. And they've actually made that somewhat permanent. And so with that as an inspiration, we went out to the community and said, let's give us your ideas for a week, for 10 days. How can we activate Union Station and make people look at it in a different way? And the winning idea was really cool. What we did is we set up basically a front yard in the Great Hall, right? We put down some AstroTurf. There was a hammock. There's some tables and chairs. You could play tetherball. Or you could just sit there and hang out and kind of enjoy, the nice afternoon. And it was a great success. It was a lot of fun. There was also, we had a big multicolored blob, you might remember, out on the Riverfront Plaza to get people to check that out and to come inside and see what's going on. And I think this was a great success because it really, what it did is it allowed you to get literally a different perspective on the Great Hall, right? When was the last time you hung out on a hammock in the middle of the Great Hall? What a great way to wait for your train. So this started getting people thinking about, okay, you know, this is maybe some untapped potential here. What can we do with this? So where are we now? A few years after the master plan, you just heard from Derek, right? We're finally starting to get underway on some of these short-term improvements, right? A number of the stakeholders came together and got together the funding to do the initial engineering on that, and that's great. And Amtrak is doing these things like getting the first-class lounge out of the way so that we can open up that passenger concourse. So things like this happen sort of slowly, but persistence pays off. You know, we were just out there, you know, consistently saying, look, Union Station, we got to do something about this. And eventually it starts to happen. But we're not totally there yet. In order to, you know, do these 14 projects that Derek was telling you about, we're still going to need some more funding to make that happen. So this is what I'm going to tell you about today. Metropolitan Planning Council has a number of ideas for how we can make this happen. So how are we going to do this? First one I'll tell you about is that master developer that Derek mentioned, right, to take advantage of all that underutilized space. Second is called SB 277. This is a value capture mechanism. We'll talk about that. And then the third, Tony talked about this. We need to, at a state level, seriously address our transportation funding situation. We need to establish a new source of transportation funding that is substantial and that is reliable and regular. So we'll talk about that. So this master developer that Amtrak is out looking for now, the idea is to have a comprehensive plan for what goes where in all of this underutilized space. And Derek showed you some pictures, but I've got some more. There are some really cool parts of Union Station that are closed off right now. This is, if you remember the picture of the Fred Harvey restaurant, this is inside there, and it doesn't look like much right now because there was a fire there in the 80s, and they bricked over the windows, and there's fire damage, and all the original ornamental decoration is gone. But this is a massive space. This is right off the Great Hall, right? This is on the back end of the Great Hall between it and Clinton Street, behind kind of where there's like a stage now. There's a big flag hanging there now. This is a huge space. It's about the size of this hall here, but it's 2 stories, right? There's a second story up in the back, and the potential here is enormous. Here's another view of it looking towards Canal Street. You can see some of the bricked over windows there. You could open this up, right? Open those windows up again, put in a door here, punch through here, and you've got access now from the west side of the station on Clinton Street to get straight in towards the trains. And going through here, think about all the amazing things you could do with this space, right? This could be like the Metro Market at Ogilvy. You could have a craft cocktail bar up there on the upper level. You could have individual little stands, tap into some of that great restaurant energy that's in the West Loop, and this could really be a great place. On the other side of the station, over on Canal Street, this is some former railroad office space, right? This is across the way from where they are putting in the new Metropolitan Lounge. This is the same space on the other side of the station. So this is a space that would be perfect, again, for a restaurant. You can imagine anything from a Starbucks to a fancy steakhouse in here. And this also, out these windows here, opens up onto the arcade, the colonnade there on Canal Street behind those giant columns. Be a great place to have outdoor seating for spring, summer, fall. Sit out there while you're waiting for your train, or maybe not. Maybe you're just there to hang out. So taking advantage of some of these spaces is going to provide a revenue stream, right, from leasing to those restaurants to that retail. But the challenges to getting some of this done are as big as the opportunity. And so having this master developer to guide this process and to think comprehensively about what goes where, and also to think about those air rights at the other sites that Derek mentioned, is the right way to do it. We held a lunchtime roundtable at Metropolitan Planning Council in February, and we had Ray Lang from Amtrak, who's guiding this process for Amtrak. We had an architect from Toronto, from NOR, and if you know, in Toronto, they're currently rebuilding their Union Station in a massive way. It's really cool. I encourage you to go check that out. And then we had a real estate guy and a restaurant guy. Both of them are familiar with the West Loop and also with operating in historic spaces. And the real estate guy was kind of funny. He'd moved to Chicago, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, but had never been in Union Station, or had been there once. He's a real estate guy. He's in his car all day, which he openly admitted was terrible. He's like, I need to take transit more. I need to do it. But we took him to Union Station. We showed him these spaces. He was blown away. He was like, this is amazing. We have to do something with this. The potential here is so cool. He was like, the Apple Store is going to go there, and this is going to be, like the craft cocktail bar. It's going to be great. But the challenges to making that happen, again, you're going to have to do a lot of renovation. There's infrastructure things to think about. It's all got to happen in concert together. So this master developer thing is a great thing. Amtrak's had a lot of interest in it, and this is going to be one of the ways that we're going to fund continuing improvements at the station. So that's one thing. The other thing is SB 277. I want you to write this down, SB 277. This is a bill pending in the Illinois General Assembly right now. And what this does is it uses value capture as a financing mechanism. Value capture is the idea that, so we're going to improve something, say it's a train station, and improving that train station is going to improve the property values in the surrounding neighborhood. What we're going to do is we're going to take what the property values were before the improvement, and then they're going to grow, and we're going to capture that increment, and we're going to dedicate that increment to paying for the transportation improvement. And so this is a proven mechanism. This has worked around the world and here in the country. It's what they did in Denver for their beautiful new Union Station. Also an amazing thing that I would encourage you to go check out. It's what's funding the huge new Transbay Terminal in San Francisco. And it's also something that we've used to a limited extent here in Chicago in the form of TIF, tax increment financing, to fund things like the new CTA Morgan Station, the Loop Link bus rapid transit, and the big, beautiful new station that is going up right now on the elevated at Washington. But what's different about SB 277 is that it is specifically for transit, and it is specifically for 4 projects, Union Station being one of them. The other 3 are major CTA things that they're planning right now, the red-purple modernization on the north side, rebuilding the Blue Line and the Congress Expressway, and then also the Red Line extension on the south side. So it's dedicated to these 4 things. It only takes 80% of that growth increment. The other 20% is reserved and goes to the underlying taxing bodies as it would have. And importantly, it does not affect Chicago Public Schools at all. CPS still gets its full cut without being touched at all. So SB 277, call your representatives, tell them I want to see SB 277 happen so that we can do Union Station. Third is the major thing that Tony alluded to, and that we're all familiar with, I think. We have a big gap, right, at the state level in what we have been collecting for transportation and investing in transportation. And to give you a little more background on that, let's look at the gas tax in particular. This blue line here is the gas tax in fixed, in today's dollars, right? And it's how much you or I, the average person, pays in gas tax every year. So the gas tax was last raised in 1991, right? At that point, it was set at a fixed cents per gallon level, right? It's not tied to gas prices at all, nor is it tied to inflation. So the effect has been that, again, the average person was paying about $150 a year in Illinois gas taxes in 1991 when this was last set. Think about what inflation has done to the value of a dollar since 1991. I mean, think back to what a gallon of milk cost in 1991, or a dozen eggs. I couldn't tell you. I was in like kindergarten or first grade in 1991, honestly. That's how long ago it was. So since then, inflation has cut the value of that gas tax, combined with also increased fuel economy of vehicles, right? You or I are putting less gas in the car than you used to. And now it's down to under $100. It's about $95 a year. That's about $8 a month. It's less than $8 a month. So what the average person in the state is contributing towards our transportation infrastructure is now down to about like a cheeseburger per month, right? It's like a Netflix subscription. It's almost nothing. And so this has had a predictable effect on what we've invested, what we've spent in transportation at the state level. This orange line is the amount that we've spent on transportation every year relative to the state budget as a whole, right? So back in 1991, it was pretty high. It was up at about 13% of the state budget. And then as you can see, it's been on a pretty steady decline since then. Now there are some spikes. Those are the capital bills that we pass occasionally, like Illinois Jobs Now, which we like to think of as big capital bills, but really the $1 billion here and there is not enough, honestly. And then this is the stimulus act here. You can see that did a little bit. But on the whole, the trend is down, right? And so this has had a very predictable effect. We know what this means, right? If you've driven lately, you know there are more potholes everywhere. You know, you take Metro, you take CTA, and you maybe hear about signal failures more than you used to. And, you know, those delays and the poor conditions of our roads have a real cost, right? There's a hidden cost there that we're paying, whether it's what you're paying extra to fix your car or that lost time, right, when you're sitting on the train not going anywhere. And this is slowing down our state's economy, right? At a time when we should be investing more, to be creating jobs, to get back on the right track, we're not. We're continuing to dilute ourselves and underinvest like this. And around the office at MPC, we've started to think about this as Illinois' third deficit. We know about the budget deficit. We know about the pension deficit. We have a transportation deficit too, and it's just as important, and we need to be thinking about it in the same thought and mentioning it in the same breath when we talk about the other two. We have to address this year. So we've been doing some research. If you say, great, we have to address this, how much is it? How much do we need? We've been doing research at MPC. We've been looking at numbers from RTA, CTA, Metro, PACE. We talked to Amtrak. We talked to IDOT. Figure out what we really need, and we're actually announcing that on Monday. We're announcing the results of our research and one way to begin to address this problem at City Club here in Chicago. We hope you can join us. If not, pay attention. You'll read about it in the media, or you can go to our website and read about it. Because again, we need to do this not just for Union Station and not just for the ways that you and I get around every day, but for the future of our state. So we can do this. These are our three ways, right? We're going to have that retail revenue from the master developer and all the great new food and beverage and everything in the station. SB 277, again, write that down. This is the phone number for Speaker Madigan's office in Springfield. Please call and just politely tell them cordially, hey, SB 277, I'd like to see that happen so that we can start to pay for Union Station and other transit issues in the city of Chicago. And then, of course, the big one, we're going to have to address transportation funding at a state level. So with one or more of those, and a little more patience, and a little more persistence, eventually we are going to have our awesome, renovated, expanded Union Station, right? So thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. I hope this has given you something to think about. I would encourage you to check out our website at metroplanning.org. You can sign up for our newsletter, read our blog. State will keep you up to date on Union Station, all these other planning issues in the region, or you could follow us at Metro Planners on Twitter. And with that, I will invite Derek to come back up, and we will together take your questions about Union Station.
What's going on the south side of Jackson between Clinton and Canal? Amazing architecture seems to be happening there.
You're talking about the Union Station Bus Center, right? Is that what that is?
Repeat the question.
Yeah, the question was what's going on the south side of Jackson between Clinton and Canal. So that is an exciting CDOT, City of Chicago, and CTA project. That's part of the Loop Link Bus Rapid Transit. And what is going on there is they're building an off-street bus facility so that all of the city bus routes that end at Union Station will no longer be taking up street space. They will have a dedicated place there with covered platforms where you can wait for the bus or get off the bus. And not only is that going to help relieve street congestion, it's also going to give you a way to get directly into Union Station. They're putting in a staircase there and an elevator to go underground and punch into the existing tunnel, the pedway that goes out to the parking garage there, the Amtrak-owned parking garage. And that's going to be a way to get right into Union Station and stay dry and not have to cross the street. I think that should be ready later this summer, but don't quote me on that.
Talked about the master developer expected to produce a lot of money from retail.
The questioner asked about other spaces around the Union Station head house, including the canopy area along Canal Street south of Jackson, over the parking garage, and over the transportation center. The master developers, the request of the master developer will be to look at all of those spaces in total. So the potential there is to develop those additional properties that Amtrak owns in conjunction with looking at what to do with the head house office tower, the eight floors up above the station themselves, the station itself. So yes, it does include that. Yes, the gentleman with the blue sweater. Yes.
Okay, two quick questions. The Great Hall in Union Station is obviously a very beautiful, but it's also a very large area. Is there anybody kicking around the idea of perhaps adding a second level that would still let plenty of light in to provide a space like perhaps St. Pancras International, London, that provides more shopping, but also lets plenty of natural
Okay, do you
light
want
in?
that one?
And the second quick question is the narrowing of the track centers that you're doing right now in Union Station. Will that preclude the possibility of adding more capacity underground, like DC or Denver Union Station?
The gentleman asked two questions, one of which was, with the Great Hall, is there consideration being given to adding a second level above, since the space is so great? And I'll attend to that one first. Conceptually, the master developer, I guess all cards are on the table, if you will. So that possibility is out there. What concepts can they come up with that are feasible to sort of maximize the commercial opportunities and enhance the transportation of the space? In terms of the second question was about shifting the track centers to expand the size of the platforms in the station itself. I guess technically I'm not sure whether or not that precludes anything happening underneath. I don't know if you can answer that, but no, I think part of the long-range plan is looking at, and we have friends of ours here from CDOT as well, is looking at possibly running additional tracks underneath either Clinton or Canal Street to sort of provide a through train service from the north to the south. Similar to what's more common in through passenger stations. Whether or not that happens underneath the tracks themselves or if that happens in the street right of way, that's not yet determined.
And also the high-speed rail, the post office, right? If you look at the master plan, there's also additional track capacity under the post office by reusing the mail tracks, essentially. And so with things starting to move at the post office, that's also an exciting possibility to keep in mind.
Representative?
I follow up on that question. Both Washington and the California renovations included some options for future high-speed rail projects and also through traffic. Is that part of the master plan? I think we mentioned part of that, but high-speed rail in Chicago to the Midwest and so forth. I want to more of Midwest high-speed rail.
The question was plans for additional tracks. Does that contemplate higher speed rail? Yes. I would say the answer to that is yes. So what you mean by high speed rail, though, is probably open to interpretation in the United. Of course. I think one of the things that we understand, and this is from work that's been done for us, is that one of the keys to enhancing accessibility or enhancing sort of the throughput of the station is having through tracks. The high-level platforms that we're looking at on the east side of the station, those high-level platforms are along the tracks that actually run north and out of the station. So again, that enhances our ability to sort of move trains through and out of the station. There are some limiting factors from having to pull a train in and back it out. So through capacity increases our ability to bring in more trains. Mr. Johnson.
More about some of your operational Amtrak things. You mentioned baggage cars. You've got a lot of baggage cars, but there are not a lot of baggage cars in the Midwest. And as I understand it now, you're making the make the states say, well, if you want a baggage car, you've got to pay for it. Is there any idea to try to get more baggage service? I mean, you mentioned the thing in White Sulphur Springs. Is there any way to make baggage more of a what it is on the airlines where you don't have to carry it?
The question was, are we looking at ways to try and enhance baggage service and provide more baggage service to customers on trains? Section 209, which is the legislation that governs how we administer and how we run state-supported service, requires us to charge the states for additional services on board. So in terms of regional trains here in the Midwest, much of that will be driven by the states who sponsor the Amtrak trains' willingness to absorb that cost. That being said, the states do have on order additional rolling stock to re-equip the Midwestern trains. My understanding is that the cab cars include some provision for additional baggage space, so that is being contemplated. In terms of our long-distance trains, of course, baggage service enhancements are always something that we're looking at. Things like baggage light, where customers will bring their bag right to the side of the train and the conductor will help them check it. That's to address situations around the nation where we have stations without ticket agents. So, there's a gentleman here in front of the green post.
You spoke about the cars that are currently being delivered. How about the cars with double-deck cars, which would be on higher speed trains in the Midwest? When do we expect to see some?
The gentleman asked about the order for intercity passenger cars that a consortium of states here in the Midwest and California has ordered. My understanding is the manufacturer of those cars is working on trying to come up with a fix for some challenges that they've been having. I do not have a date for delivery of those cars. This gentleman here, fourth row back, with the checkered shirt.
Last year, in conjunction with Amtrak Train Days, Amtrak offered for free tours of Union Station. Are there plans for that again this year?
He asked about tours of Union Station in conjunction with Amtrak National Train Day. Amtrak National Train Day was an Amtrak marketing initiative. We have moved on beyond that marketing initiative. We have another initiative that does not involve Train Day, but Chicago Union Station and the Amtrak and staff here, we will be having a celebration of railroading this summer at a particular date, not yet determined, and it will include tours. Did you want to pick somebody?
Sir, there in the, on the aisle, yeah.
It's a companion study to the master plan. There has been mention of an additional study of passenger rail access routes into the city to go along with this. Is that still in the works?
He asked of an additional study that's being done to look at access routes of passenger rail into Chicago. My understanding is that is a grant that the region received from the Federal Railroad Administration. And Jeff, if I say something wrong, shout me down. But yes, that is ongoing. Is that right? Gentleman with the blue sweater.
Probability that that could be reinstated? And if not, could shuttle service be put between, say, Detroit and Windsor, or Sarnia and Port Huron? I'd like to see the connection between us and Toronto and Stuart. Thank you.
The gentleman asked about former Amtrak service that existed between Chicago and Toronto, which was discontinued a number of years ago, partly because of the challenges of the border crossing. Yes, there are several initiatives that are moving forward which may bear fruit in terms of restoring or connecting two key intercity rail corridors, Chicago to Detroit and Windsor to Toronto. Right now, my colleagues and I have been working with several members of the U.S. Congress in putting forth legislation that would allow for enhanced or easier crossings for marine vessels and rail vessels internationally between the United States and Canada. So that is live legislation in Congress. I'll see if I can get that information to Rick so he can post it, because we would love it if you would contact our congressional delegation here in the Midwest to tell them to support that bill. And the goal is, we have been working with Michigan DOT and with Via Rail Canada, because the concept is, how do we restore that connection between Detroit and Windsor between the two rail systems. So there are some things in the works that may help that, and we'll get you more information on that through Rick, through the Midwest High Speed Rail. How about Professor Bliss? Yes.
Regarding basically it's like around the station itself, particularly regarding the post office and its potential use or the potential use of that location for high-speed regional rail traffic that might relate to Australia. What's happening with that section of the local stations and changes of the post office relative
Sure. Go for it. So the question was about what's happening with the post office site and with the tracks under it and their potential to be high-speed rail platforms. First of all, I would encourage everyone to go check out. You can actually look at the whole Union Station master plan at unionstationmp.com, or just Google Union Station master plan. It addresses some of the engineering, things going on there and the potential of these tracks under the post office. It is a great way to add capacity with through tracks, but there are some challenges, obviously, with the current owner of the post office and what will happen there. But I can say things are starting to move there, and I think Derek would agree. The future is bright for that. Ma'am, there in the red.
Looks like they're going north from the station on the train. You go across a couple streets. Is this going to address that mess up there?
The questioner asked about the grade crossings at Canal Street, and I think there's one at Clinton and a couple of more to the west, whether or not some of the plans here are addressing those crossings. To be honest, I don't know the answer to that.
Last question for Bob.
Yes.
Who do you see as your typical customer at Union Station? And how would they be primarily people who are using it for transportation, or would it be people from the surrounding community?
The question is, who do we see as their primary user at Union Station? I think this is a question that both Ryan and I can probably answer. I'll give you my comments. Right now, the station today is primarily used by railroad passengers. And I think as we, through the master development plan with MPC and the city, to turn the station into more of a community-focused, commercially viable entity in the Western Loop, the station will become a sort of a center of activity for the entire community. So I think the ratio of rail passengers will decline, and the ratio of those folks who are coming to the station for other purposes will go up. But of course, we'd like to convert those folks into train passengers eventually.
Yeah, I would say the vision is for Union Station to be a place for everybody as a neighborhood asset, whether you are catching a train or not. You want a place to go maybe to grab a bite or a drink with some friends. And with the way the West Loop is changing, again, both the office market, people starting to live there, it has a great potential to be sort of a front yard, a public plaza for the neighborhood. And that's the potential that we would really like to see taken advantage of.
Great ending.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
As you know, we want them to just build it. So there's your mug so you can write folks at work to just build it. Thank you.
Thank you.